Hi guys, Herbalist40 here, and welcome back. Okay, so today we have episode 3 and a couple of others guaranteed in our lost research. I'm going to start off by playing a little scene for you guys. I'll just turn up the volume for you real quick, and I want you to listen. If I can get it to play, that is.
Was it a dinosaur?
It wasn't a dinosaur.
You say you didn't see it.
I didn't.
So how do you know it wasn't a dinosaur?
Because dinosaurs are extinct.
Oh. Yeah.
Okay, so I'm not going to go into the detail of why they just said that, but it relates to what I showed you in the last episode, the polar bear. Now, the reason I'm showing this particular scene, this particular conversation in this episode is because we do have a lot of references to dinosaurs in Grand Theft Auto 5, and they didn't just materialise out of the blue. Now, they are related to the bird. The closest descendants to dinosaurs that we have today are in fact birds. So I want you to bear that in mind, and obviously understand that everything in this series, in my opinion, helped create the Grand Theft Auto 5 that we know. Okay, so another thing we have here in Lost is this red truck. Now, the red truck is something that we've seen in different aspects in Grand Theft Auto. The one I want to point out is on a particular Grand Theft Auto website where it gives you the option to play God, and if you do, it gives you a red family vehicle that crashes into the tree, that bursts into flames, everyone's dead inside, and in that particular image there is also the Labrador. Now, as I said, the gameplay footage and the images relating to the game will be brought up when I come back on these elements. But I know that most of you who have played the game for a while now have already seen all the things that I'm referring to, so hopefully I won't be leaving too many people behind. Now, Netflix is always a bit of a pain in the arse to get things to stop where you want it to. Like, it seems to have certain segments, so like when I was trying to show you the cigarette logo the other day, it wasn't that I couldn't get it done, like that I couldn't do it like myself, it was that Netflix wouldn't allow it because it would only allow me to pause like 2 seconds before or after that particular scene, and that's what I mean by segments. But here you can see obviously the van is red and it's a flame, and the man inside is dead. The characters don't really correlate to the picture that I'm referring to in the Grand Theft Auto 5 website, but still, just because things don't look exactly the same doesn't mean that the correlation isn't still there. Now we're going to make a quick stop here on Mr. John Locke. Now, I've told you about him a couple of times already. He's going to be someone that we're going to be paying close attention to for many reasons, but for the reason right now, he's actually blowing a whistle that he handcrafted to try and distract Vincent, the dog that's run away, the Labrador that belongs to Walt, the young boy that I spoke of in the last episode regarding Lost episode 2. What's interesting here is that Walt and John have created some sort of a bond, and the bond is basically that John told Walt a secret. He said that a miracle happened to him. Now, I'll get to that when the time comes, but that's all you need to know for now, is that John told Walt that a miracle happened to him, and after that, Walt's father got a bit annoyed and told Walt that he doesn't want him hanging around John anymore. However, here you can see John is now trying to get back Walt's dog, and what he's going to do next is quite interesting. So, this is shortly after the image I just showed you. He blows the whistle. I believe 3 times, and the dog ends up coming back. Now, what I really want to point out here is the collar that Vincent has. Now, yes, this is cyan blue. Now, that's not the only thing that catches my eye about this dog. So I'm going to cut it here and jump to a next scene where I can show you another spectrum of colour that we've been looking at, notably red. So here we have the cyan blue tag, which I'm pointing at now because you won't be able to see it in the next scene.
Found your son's dog.
What?
Vincent? I tethered him to a tree just over there. I know that Walt lost his mom. I thought that you should be the one to bring his dog back to him.
Hey, thanks.
Welcome.
So as I said, this is Walt's dad lying down, and he basically told Walt that he didn't want him hanging around with John, but now he's starting to realise that maybe his opinions on John might have been wrong, his initial opinions, because John is now, of his own accord, making a very good step towards Michael, Walt's father, and that is allowing him to return the dog to his son, rather than him overstepping and doing it in Michael's place. Now, the reason I'm pointing this out is because we're going to be talking a lot about Dharma, yes, we're going to be talking a little bit about love as well, but we're also going to be bearing in mind our big karma theories, and a lot of what karma entices is included in this series for obvious reasons, but I want to point out that it's not obviously just doing things wrong or bad things and having bad things happen to you in return. It's also sometimes the aspect of doing good things and have other good things happen to you in return. So it's kind of like looking at the glass half full or the glass as half empty. It just depends what spectrum you want to be on.
It doesn't matter, Kate, who we were, what we did before the crash. It doesn't really... Three days ago, we all died. We should all be able to start over.
Now, I'm hoping that the sound quality is good enough that you can all hear the scene I'm playing for you. But if you didn't, he said, as of 3 days ago, we all died. Now, the first thing of interest is the number 3. Numerology is going to be a huge thing in Lost, and it already is a huge thing in Grand Theft Auto. I don't even have to go into the whole 666 and the whole 777 or the 10 is the godly number. All that aside, just the number 88. If you don't want to go into the religious side of things, we do have the number 88 that keeps reappearing in different shapes and forms. Whether it be in the Back to the Future references, or whether it be Franklin's birthday, or the graffiti that comes from the gang all over the city, and also others, a lot of other connections that me and Wispy have made, notably. A lot of the dates of the things we have looked into are often 88, of 1888, 1988, 1788. We have had these dates come up a lot, therefore they are of interest. Not to forget as well the fact that 8 is also infinity, and that we have the Infinity 8 killer, etc. But bearing in mind, as far as Grand Theft Auto goes, Michael, for one, is attempted to start a clean slate. There are also conversations with psychiatrists which kind of discuss this particular topic between him and Michael. So clean slates and starting over is also something that's relevant to us, and we just need to now understand what we need to do towards it. And what do I mean by that? I mean that in the sense, are we supposed to try and fix Michael's fuck up in the sense that he did try and do good, but it didn't last very long and he didn't do very well at it? Are we supposed to try and rectify that during the story mode? Because as I said, a lot of us are trying very intense karma theories where we try not to kill anyone, and that is mainly with Michael that we try to do this. So I'm just wondering, is there more sense to that theory than we give it? Now pay close attention to this next scene. What do I see here? Is it not our good friend the apple? You need to understand. Did you see the logo behind that? I'm going to pause it and show you a second. What do I keep telling you about this particular glyph, this particular plane logo? We're going to be seeing this a lot. This is still on the plane debris, on the carcass of the plane itself, but it will be in other incidences, let me tell you. But the fact is that Saeed just threw the apple to Sawyer. Now, I know I haven't shown you full episodes because I can't really do that. Like, I can't really show you too much detail. I don't want to be in trouble for copyright and all sorts of things like that. I have to make sure that my videos are just for documentation, and I'm clearly not showing you this in high quality or good audio or full scenes at a time. I am just documenting certain elements of the series. Now, the importance of the apple here is huge. There was a scene earlier where one of the characters was in a storeroom with jars of pears and jars of peaches, but I didn't want to get you too confused. So the minute I want you to focus on the apple and the fact that he throws it to him, and for a split second again, just like in the last scene that I showed you in episode 2 in the plane itself, when important things come up, this logo appears for a split second in the background, and we will be focusing on this again. Now, here we're going to make a quick stop on Charlie before we finish off on the other interesting thing about Vincent the dog. But I told you in episode 1 that he had written hate on the bandages on his 4 fingers of his left hand. And I also told you in episode 2 that we were going to be coming back to this, and I'm going to have to grab the phone 1 second. I do apologise. So yeah, basically here he's changing what he had written in the first episode from hate to late. Now, I'll be explaining this in the future. There's a bit of controversy as to what this symbolises, but it is important to point it out. Wordplay has been one of the major things I've looked into in most of my videos and most of my research. Whoops. Are we going to get it here, or am I going to have to rewind? There you go. I'm going to have to rewind. Basically, Vincent's collar is red. Now, as I said, everything happens for a reason. These scenes are very precisely put together. Nothing's done by accident, but as you can see here, Vincent's leash, not collar, is red. Now, I'm just going to say for the minute, just remember what I told you about red and blue and good and evil, but I think that Vincent here is going to help us to understand and determine at some point the differences between good and evil, and not necessarily just the obvious ones. But that is going to be it for episode 3, and I will join you in just a minute for episode 4. Okay guys, so we've moved on to episode 4 here, and as I told you previously, Locke, John Locke, the guy we're looking at laying down now, told Walt that a miracle happened to him. I'm going to gain a bit of time by explaining what that miracle is. As you can see here, he's realising that he's regained use of his legs and feet. I'll explain the reasons when we come to those, but just so you're aware of a few things, he basically lost the use of his legs. He was in a wheelchair when he got on this plane, and now he's just crashed, and all of a sudden he can walk again. One of a few things that I'm going to bring up multiple times before we fully understand the importance of them. In this particular scene, the dog Vincent is kind of going mad, and they can hear noise in the part of the plane that still has a few bodies in there. They go follow up on what's going on, and they find out that inside the fuselage they are boars. But the interesting thing here is Locke's reaction to the boars. I'm going to try and pause the scene on his facial expression when he realises what is actually in the plane. Okay, so as I said, this is Locke shortly after, I think this is about 4 days in from the moment the crash happened. So far the only animal they've been confronted to is a polar bear, and as I pointed out last time, we saw it in the comic, and on top of that, you really shouldn't expect to see a polar bear on a tropical island. But anyway, it's just a couple of seconds. I'm going to click play here. You can already see the expression on John's face when he realises what the animals are. Throughout the first season, they kind of just leave it as him being good at hunting, but this will develop into something a little bit more important as we go along. But just check out the expression on his face here. So as I said, it was only a split second, but basically he has quite a mysterious look in his eye, I'd say, and as I've told you before, when people create these TV shows, these movies and these video games, they put in a lot of money, a lot of time and a lot of effort, and therefore nothing's left to chance. Everything is calculated, everything is done for a reason. But anyway, we're just going to carry on with the episode, and hopefully I'll be able to squeeze in some of 5 and 6 as well. Right, now this is shortly after the boar incident, and basically they're going to be burning the remaining bodies that are left in the fuselage of the plane. The reason being is because the bodies are attracting animals and they need to get rid of them in the best way possible. The best way in this situation is to burn them, because even if they bury them, the animals are going to dig them back up again. Now the reason I've chosen to stop on this is because Lost is going to make a strong point about big fires. Now, I know it's a bit of a long shot, but things will build up and will connect when we get to them. But for the moment, just bear in mind eternal flames. Eternal flames, basically, and also, in a sense, altars with flames that we've seen, and obelisks with flames on the top of them. All those sorts of things we've been looking into seem to be correlated to the way Lost is portraying fire. So just going to quickly press play on the rest of this.
Turn my fuselage into a furnace.
So as you just heard, I hope, he said we're going to turn that fuselage into a furnace. Now, again, when I say they choose things purposely, the wordplay here, furnace, is very important. Okay, so remember when I told you that the radio or the walkie-talkie they were using to try and pick up a frequency was of importance, and I initially said we might have to get it up to further ground. I was saving this for this episode before I mentioned it, but just take a look at Saeed here before I carry on.
You heard him a transceiver?
If the Frenchwoman's transmissions have truly been playing on the loop for 16 years, then there must be a power source on the island, a significant one.
And you can find.
Okay, so as you just heard, he said if we can reconfigure this, we can locate a power source on the island, and he says a fairly significant one. I want you to... I'm just going to let it play here in silence for a second and see if the image comes back up again. Here you go, you can see it right there. Basically, he has modified this walkie-talkie now. He's added a load of different wires, and it looks quite strange, if I'm honest. Now, what's important to note here is that the tool or the piece of equipment that we're given by Epsilon in the game looks like a normal walkie-talkie that's just been fiddled with and had a few extra bits added onto it. Another thing we are looking for is a certain form of power source, perhaps to help us power up the DeLorean, or i.e. the space docker. Now these are just speculations, but as I said, for the first few episodes it might be a little bit difficult to trust me on this, but let me tell you, you will regret saying that once we've built up to what I'm getting to. I'm not sure how far we're going to have to go into this. We may have to see all of it, but let me just remind you, there are 6 seasons and 23 45-minute episodes minimum per season. So that's a lot of footage. So far, I'm going to remind you, this is the beginning of episode 4. The credits are still on the screen. And in my personal opinion, I've already given you a fair share of correlations, enough at least for you to start lending me a little bit of trust towards what I'm bringing to the table. The way I see it, this could build up to more than just a separate Easter egg, because those of you who know me know that I do a lot of that. If I see something, it doesn't necessarily have to be correlated to any particular mystery we're looking at. I'm going to bring it to you guys anyway. But I do want to point out that in this particular case, when it comes to Lost, in my opinion, we are looking at things that are going to allow us to move forward in the physical steps that we have been looking for. Now, in this particular scene, they have just realised that they've run out of food. And Mr. Locke here, who I pointed out a little minute ago, was a hunter, or they're portraying him as being a hunter in some way, shape or form. They don't really expose it until a lot later on in the series, so I'm just going to stick with what we're being told for now. But what that correlates to highly for me, number one, I showed you in the first episode that there's a very bizarre scene with him smiling with a quarter of an orange in his mouth. Now we know orange to be attributed to Trevor. We also know hunting to be a big part of Trevor's storyline. And for those of you who follow me closely and who believe in what I'm telling you, I have made many big connections to Orion, the great hunter, who also ties into the 2 dog stars, Sirius A and B. We're also confronted with 2 dogs during the game, whether that be Chop or the Labrador. Chop is an enigma to me, but I believe that he really does correlate to Franklin. Now, the Labrador you might think correlates to just Franklin, but you'd be wrong, because the same Labrador appears on the website where you can play God, and it also appears in Michael's house. These are all things that I've put in my previous videos, so if you want to know more about that and you haven't seen my previous work, I would encourage you go check some of my older stuff out before you carry on with the Lost here, because I'm not going to spend too much time stopping on things that I've already explained and that the more seasoned hunters will already understand. But anyway, bearing in mind that he has a hunting knife, they don't actually have any weapons at this point, but Locke has just encouraged the group to go out on a hunt for boar, and during this scene they refer to the boar as being of the silverback descent. There's different types of boars. Now, no, razorback, not silverback, sorry, razorback. Now, why do I bring that up is because Wispy Woods, notably, I think he's the one who's done the most work on this, has showed you, in example, if we take the pigeon, it's not just the pigeon, it's what type, what descendants, what part of that race are we looking at, what group, what colours does it have, what aspects does it have. The razorback boar is a horned beast. Now, all of this, for those of you who already have seen most of my work, is going to connect in your heads already, and you're going to be understanding where I'm going with this. But for the rest of you, again, I really do encourage that you try and catch up on my previous work before you go any further. The longer you delay that, the harder it's going to be. And I'm pretty much around 35 videos, so this is the point where I really want to stop and tell everyone who hasn't seen my older stuff, go check it out now, try and get up to date, because a lot of things will be a lot clearer and a lot more understandable to you if you do that. And hopefully the more of you who do take that path of taking the time to watch what I've done before, together we can come to some pretty awesome conclusions. Because again, like I always say, I'm not going to sit here arrogantly and say I'm the only one who holds the keys to the mysteries we're looking into. It does need to be some form of team effort in this. Right, so this is another scene with Locke, and Very similar to a lot of the symbolism in Grand Theft Auto 5, they've chosen to portray this tin of orange soda with a big orange sun behind it, with rays coming off it. Now, again, for those of you not experienced, you're going to be skeptical about things like this, but come on, look, just watch a documentary called Room 237. It's in regards to the movie Shining from Stanley Kubrick, and from that you will understand immediately that all these food tins and drink tins and signs and everything that you can see during these films and series are put there on purpose. Nothing's done by mistake. Sometimes in a series where the symbolism isn't mystery related, they'll have a clear scene of a character walking around with a Pepsi can in his hand, and for a few seconds all you can see is that Pepsi can in that character's hand. Now that's called advertisement. It's done on purpose. Here it's the same principle in play. They could have had Fanta if they wanted to get money off Fanta. Instead of that, they've chosen their own brand of drink. I don't believe, unless I'm mistaken, I don't believe this is any like particular main brand that anyone's going to be familiar with. It probably was created for the series itself. Right, so to finish off this episode, instead of going into 5 and 6, which I'm going to try and cover tomorrow, 5, 6 and 7, we're going to take a quick look at something that I've been wanting to show you from the start. Decided afterwards that I was going to show you at the end, and now I've decided I'm going to show you now. Basically, before Tabula Rasa, which is episode 3, my Netflix, I paid for it while I was in France, so it's obviously all in French format, but episode 3 here is Tabula Rasa, and to make that as simple as possible, it means clean slate. Now, I just want to show you the episodes and names for series 1 here for starters. Episode 4, which was the second one we looked at in this episode, is called Walkabout, and that relates a lot to John Locke. Now, what's interesting about episode 5, which we're going to be covering tomorrow, is White Rabbit. That's something that Wispy has spoken of before, if I'm not mistaken. It is something that I will be speaking of. When Wispy and me were speaking to you about the choice between good and evil, red and blue, those of you who are familiar with the Matrix, in the first Matrix, one of the most important things that we were to pay attention to was indeed the White Rabbit. Right, so to finish off this episode, instead of going into 5 and 6, which I'm going to try and cover tomorrow, 5, 6 and 7, we're going to take a quick look at something that I've been wanting to show you from the start. Decided afterwards that I was going to show you at the end, and now I've decided I'm going to show you now. Basically, before Tabula Rasa, which is episode 3, my Netflix, I paid for it while I was in France, so it's obviously all in French format, but episode 3 here is Tabula Rasa, and to make that as simple as possible, it means clean slate. Now, I just want to show you the episodes and names for series 1 here for starters. Episode 4, which was the second one we looked at in this episode, is called Walkabout, and that relates a lot to John Locke. Now, what's interesting about episode 5, which we're going to be covering tomorrow, is White Rabbit. That's something that Wispy has spoken of before, if I'm not mistaken. It is something that I will be speaking of. When Wispy and me were speaking to you about the choice between good and evil, red and blue, those of you who are familiar with the Matrix, in the first Matrix, one of the most important things that we were to pay attention to was indeed the White Rabbit. Right, so after that, number 6 is going to be another interesting title to us, and it is of course the House of the Rising Sun. Now, the word of interest here is sun, rising sun should I say, but the one I really wanted to show you, and this is going to relate to my recent Herb's What Ifs episodes, episodes 3 and 4 I believe, and it's episode 7 here, and it is The Moth. Now, I'm not going to go into detail about it because I already have, as I said in Herb's What Ifs episodes 3 and 4, and maybe even a couple of other of my videos, but the moth is... I've already brought up the importance of it, how Rockstar includes it in its paperwork, in its artwork, sorry. Yeah, I just thought it was important to bring this to you to help understand why I'm spending so much time on this. But anyway, episode 8 is Confidence Man, episode 9 is Solitary, episode 10 here is Raised by Another, then we have All the Best Cowboys, then we have Whatever the Case May Be. Now here it becomes a little bit more interesting to me again, Hearts and Minds. Hearts, one of the hugest things we've been looking at, whether it be related to the previous heart Easter eggs in the old GTAs, or whether it be in the new interpretations we have of the heart relating to the cults we have in Grand Theft Auto 5. Special, as you can see, this is Walt and his father Michael, and I told you that Walt, at some point we will understand that he has certain powers, special abilities should I say. I'm sorry if there's any noise in the background, it's my dog, he's been a bit of a fucktard today, you have to excuse him. Anyway, nonetheless, here we have Homecoming, then Outlaws, then In Translation. Now Outlaws and In Translation are going to be interesting to us. The translation side is going to be due to the languages that we're going to see in Lost, that we're going to be able to compare to the languages used in Grand Theft Auto 5. Notably the languages used where they have no place to be used, and the best example of that is Capo Lavoro, but it isn't the only example. Coming up near the end here, these are going to be extremely important to us, and this one is numbers. I said it briefly in this episode or the last, I can't remember, but I said briefly that we will be looking a lot at numbers in Lost and how numerology is an important part of this series, and I've already determined how numerology is a very important part of Grand Theft Auto 5. So that's going to be interesting to look into when we get to it. Here as well, episode 19 is called Deus Ex Machina. Now, again, this is something I'm saving, but look it up. Look up Deus Ex Machina and tell me you can't make connections of your own. But anyway, carrying on, do no harm. Here again, the greater good. So this can kind of relate to karma. Like, karma is not necessarily not killing anyone at all, if you want to take it that way with Michael in your theories. One way to look at it as it is, sometimes it's necessary for a greater good, and in that case it shouldn't backfire on you. So you won't suffer the consequences of a bad action if the results of said bad action creates more good than the bad it took to do so. Moving on, Born to Run. Now, there's a lot of references to hiking in Lost and running, and hiking is also one of the major things we've looked at as far as the so-called Chiliad mystery goes. And finally here we have a 3-part ending. Now this is what I find very interesting, the fact that they would choose to do it in 3 parts, because most series endings are either 1 long episode or 2 full episodes as a 2-part series, as a 2-part ending, but not a 3-part. So for this particular series they've gone for a trinity. Now we have part 1, 2 and 3 of Exodus. Now this is not the time for going into depth because it would take too long, but these are things that you can take time to look into if you're interested in making your own conclusions. But all of these titles, not just the ones that I pointed out with the bigger connections, all of these titles are interesting to us and can be interpreted in different ways by different viewers. So I encourage you all to pay attention to what I've shown you today. Once again, I'm sorry to repeat myself, but try and check out the videos I've done previously if you haven't already. And as usual guys, until next time, take it easy and see ya.